Well, thank you so much, Ryan. It's really a pleasure to have you here with us for this conversation, to have you here just to revisit the community. And you've been making waves in the classical music world in many facets, obviously with your music career, with the way in which you perform, also very much renowned kind of for your very much expressive conducting. So it's very much a pleasure to have you. So thank you.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's good to be back.
Yeah. So I know we were just fortunate enough to have a small conversation. But the first thing that I'm kind of really interested in is that you've really had quite an amazing journey so far as a musician, as an artist, as a performer. Can you tell us a little bit about how your journey in music has started?
Yeah, I think for myself, I wish it was a much more dramatic story, but my musical life was quite simple. I was really lucky that I had free education in public schools for music. I had a great teacher in elementary school, great teacher in middle school, and a great teacher at high school that all encouraged me. Now, this again was all in public school. But because I had great teachers, I also had great access, which was really nice. Yeah. But for myself, the thing that I remember that got me very specifically into classical music was when my family got its very first computer. It was one of those old Pentium processors, Windows 95 one. And I remember there was this program on the computer called Yahoo Music Jukebox, which is a sort of old iTunes, if you will. And there were, I think, 10 different samples of songs and pieces. And one of the samples was a 1-minute selection from the second movement, the scherzo movement of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony, the bum-ba-dum, bum-ba-dum. And it was 1 minute long, but I remember being transfixed by it and listening to it thousands of times. And also thinking that Beethoven's Ninth Symphony was only 1 minute long as well, too, because it ended at 1 minute. But from there, classical music became an obsession.
Cool. So you said that you were fortunate enough to have some really good teachers. Can you maybe discuss with us a little bit about kind of what your early music education kind of looked like?
Yeah, my early music education, first and foremost, was in public school, was working in daily classes for orchestras, for bands. And then when I was in middle school, I realized that trumpet became a more important thing in my life. So my family suggested, well, maybe you should start taking lessons. I met an incredible teacher named Jason Foltz, who was my only trumpet teacher until I came to CalArts eventually. And because I had a great teacher that was also really interested in music, he was showing me all sorts of different pieces of music that I had never heard of before. He obviously taught me how to play the instrument in a proper way as well, too, which I was very thankful for. But more importantly, he showed me the vastness of the music world, which was incredibly important to me. So yeah, just having good teachers, that did everything for me.
Yeah. Wonderful. And then moving on, kind of like as you started making your way to CalArts, and I might have misheard this, misremembering this, but I believe listening, I think, to some other interviews from you that I think maybe CalArts was kind of sort of really the only really landing place destination for you moving on. So with that being said, coming into CalArts, I'm kind of curious, in what ways as a young musician did CalArts challenge you right away?
Oof, in every way. CalArts truly was, and I mean this in the most respectful way, the only option for me. My family did not have the funds for me to fly around the world, the United States even, to audition and stay in hotels and all of that. Where we could drive to is where I was going to audition. We lived in Long Beach, which is roughly 50 miles away from Valencia. And I remember coming up, having an audition with the trumpet teacher here, Ed Carroll, and got accepted on the day, which was amazing. And then I remember coming to the accepted students event, and there was another alumni of CalArts named Stephanie Richards, another trumpet player, that played this piece called Krill. I'm forgetting the composer's name off the top of my head right now. And I thought it was the strangest thing I'd ever heard, and I really didn't want to come here anymore. I remember thinking, this is weird. No, I don't do weird music. I do Mozart and I do Haydn, and that's all I do. And it took my dad to say, you need to have an open mind. You need to understand that it's not going to look like how you think it's going to look like. I remember coming to CalArts with a conservative mindset. That was gone in 3 months. Yeah, max. Yeah, it was gone in 3 months. The world became more colorful, as it should have. Yeah.
Cool. That's wonderful. So a little bit about today, the present day for you. You've conducted orchestras across the globe, and kind of sort of have 3 regular assignments now as conductor artists.
Yeah.
How do different cultural contexts influence the work that you're doing?
Funnily enough, I don't find it affects that much. Actually, I thought when I was a much younger conductor, I'm still a young conductor, but when I was a much younger conductor, that I would have to adapt everywhere I go. If I was conducting in Poland, I would have to adapt. If I was conducting in France, in Romania, in the UK, I would have to research what it was like to interact with people. But the thing that I've noticed everywhere I go is, in general, people just want someone to show up as they are and someone that's honest as to how they make music. They're hiring me, thankfully. And so obviously that shows an interest in how I do things as well. So culturally, I don't find many differences. Sure, there might be differences in, say, work-life balance, for example. London, famously, you have 1 or 2 rehearsals and then you do the concert. You go somewhere else, say in Sweden, you can have 3, 4, 5 rehearsals. There's different types of balances, but when it comes to actual cultural differences, the world is a bit more is a bit smaller than I thought it was, actually. And also in the age of the internet, I mean, people have access to so many things, and I find more the cultural differences when I go out into the city. Music is so unbelievably universal than how people choose to communicate with each other.
And with that, I think you spoke to a little bit about it, just with you coming in and they just kind of expecting really just you to be you, and that's what they're wanting, I would say, because it's your word for they're asking you to come. How do you develop your relationships with the orchestras that you get to work with?
It's a steady process, for sure. First and foremost, orchestras are not monoliths. Everyone perhaps wants something different, more unique, less unique. Everyone has their own opinion on something. For myself, what I can have a focus on is going in and doing the best job that I possibly can, being as prepared as I possibly can, having good intention and goodwill towards fellow musicians that I'm working with, being efficient. Then you start developing a relationship with orchestras. You start developing the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th time you go back to a place, you start meeting people and getting to know individuals, which is always really fun as well. But from a purely musical standpoint, you get to understand nuances and how people enjoy playing, and what I can also bring to an orchestra as well too. It's a steady process, not a slow process, but a steady process.
Cool. And then I do want to go back. I think it would be hard to have a conversation with you without talking about the Malko competition, which was in 2018 for our viewers who don't know when you took part of the competition. But it was clearly a significant turning point, I think, maybe not just for your career, but I would probably say, hope you would say also for your life as well. So how would you say that winning that competition has had an impact on your life?
Well, I think I can. That's a different chapter in a different book entirely. I mean, I think I can measure my life in books, not just in chapters. But it's winning the Malko competition and participating in the Malko competition. More importantly, it puts you on a really big stage. It puts you on a stage of access to lots of the orchestral world around the globe. In my case, being able to win this competition was, I worked really hard for it, and I'm very thankful that I won it. And it immediately opened up career possibilities. Part of the prize was being able to conduct 24, 25 some odd orchestras overnight, basically, which is an amazing thing and a huge responsibility as well, too. So I went from, 2 weeks before not really being sure where my career was going to go, other than I knew that I was dedicated to it and I would do everything I could to pay the bills.
Yeah.
To the next night after that, getting really incredible invites from really incredible places, and essentially being able to travel the world making music, which was a huge thing for 28-year-old Ryan. It changed absolutely everything in my life. My entire pace of life changed overnight in one day. Yeah.
And how would you feel, because I'm sure you had to make a lot of adjustments to your life very quickly after that, how would you say that you did your best to manage those changes?
I spoke with friends, spoke with my husband. I was very honest with everyone, spoke with my managers. I had managers all of a sudden. That was a thing that changed for sure. It's always been a really important thing for me to be emotionally open to those that I love. And also in many respects, emotionally open to those that I work with as well, too. I find the more honest I am with doubts, with successes, with joy, sadness, whatever, the more open I am with those aspects of life, it becomes less insular, less singular in a way, and the nerves tend to go away. Yeah, which is nice. But just being open, really open with people and telling people how I feel.
So then, as a follow-up to that, leading up to this, I've been looking at a few of your performances, and I had mentioned earlier that one of the things that you're somewhat renowned for is for your expressive conducting style. But for me, I would say that one of the things that really stick out to me, I think truly is not just how physically expressive you are, but you spoke to emotion, how emotively, facially you are with the music. And for me, at least watching the few performances I have seen, also as a person who also just does love the art of conducting and orchestral music in general, you come across to me as an individual who does seem to have a deep connection with the music that not just you are making, but the entire group that you're collaborating with is making. And for me as a fellow musician, I can relate to that a little bit. And for me, I would say that part of that comes from my own personal love of music and what motivates me in my own art practice. So I'm kind of curious for you, what motivates you in your art practice? And maybe how does that also relate to the way in which you also decide to work and with the pieces that you work with, but also the people that you work with?
Yeah, I'm also curious for you as well too. I think for myself, whenever I'm conducting any piece of music, I try to relate it to real life situations, real life of feeling, real life curiosity, real life whatever. I think the more abstract I become, the more confused I become as well, too. Now, a vast majority, or at least a large amount of classical music is abstract music. When you look at a symphony of Mozart, it's abstract music. It's not necessarily about something. There's not necessarily a narrative or a story. And I also don't think that that kind of thought process is necessarily necessary for music making. But there's always character.
Yes.
There's always color. There's always direction. There's always pulse. There's always things. There's always environment that you can relate in pieces to. When someone is playing a phrase in a really light way, and then you hear that exact same thing being played in a really sort of sinister way, you immediately get emotional difference there. Now, it might not pull up an image or a story or anything, but it does give you emotional difference. And so with myself, whenever I'm preparing something, I'm not sitting down with a score saying, this is the morose part, or this is this part, but I'm asking myself constantly, well, what is this telling me? What does the composer intend in this moment? And how can I express that without saying louder, softer, slower, faster? You know, how can I figure out a way to relate this to real life so that when performers are performing this, there is something that makes it that much more subtle, not just louder, but this needs to be ecstatic. It gives more than just volume. It gives character. It gives articulation. It gives length. It gives all sorts of things without having to fix things in a way. So for me, even if I'm conducting something that's incredibly abstract, I'm always trying to think of what real life possibility does this connect to. It also helps me get more into the music as well too. How can I relate it to my own life? I didn't grow up with a musical background, so I'm not necessarily going to be able to pick up on a lot of musical references all the time, but I can draw on my own experience as well. And for me, that's just as valuable.
Yeah. Well, since you asked, I think for me, I think the biggest thing for me, like Barbara said, not always a narrative, but there always is a character, there always is an emotion. For me, the biggest thing for my own art practice that I love to explore is that there is always a sense, in the sense of the five senses. It's, you're in a space, I'm thinking from an audience perspective.
Yeah.
They're in a space, whether big or small. I think that matters for me with the music that either I am making or I'm performing. You're not necessarily, you're in a space with other people.
Yeah.
I think that matters about how you experience something. And then there is, for me, I'm always conscious of like, what does the air feel like in this space right now? How closely are we sitting to one another? How close are we sitting to the performer? For me, that has a big impact on the way in which I approach music, not just in the moment, but also approaching the moment of performance.
Yeah.
And thinking about how all of those things affect, one, how I perform, but two, how I perform directly to how an audience is going to experience that. And then all of those things are connected, interwoven with the character and with the emotion and how I approach the character and an emotion. And it could be different from space to space. And so for me, kind of as a person, I always think about as a performer that for me, in whichever way that I'm performing, if it's me just as a composer, I'm giving something to someone, or if I'm physically the performer in a space, for me, everything is always approached from my perspective as an audience member. Even if I am the performer, I am the audience member. And so what would I want to enjoy? How would I want to experience this thing? And that how can that be created? So for myself personally, that's the thing that motivates me. Not to be like egotistical, but I like to think I have a good sense of how things should sound. And overall, that's how I like to think about it. It's not music, it's sound.
Yeah.
And there's a science to sound and how sound affects the brain, absolutely, the mind, but also the body. And so I think deeply about those things. I get excited about those things. And so for me personally is, one, how can I find a piece of music?
Yeah.
How can I share that piece in music with other people? And for me personally, that's how I approach my art practice, but that's also the thing that motivates me in my art practice.
That's amazing.
Well.
That's amazing. Very inspiring.
So I would actually like to talk about your artistic philosophy a little bit and style. Yes. With really just being straightforward about it, how would you describe your philosophy as a conductor?
I think for me, it's mostly it brings me just to the broader word of understanding. I find music for myself, and I think for a lot of people, music helps people understand in the broad sense of that word as well. I think, very common thing we hear is music brings people together. That's absolutely true. It does bring people together, but also making music helps you understand a composer, helps you understand your fellow performer, helps you understand the people that are listening, helps you understand a different time in history, helps you understand how people have been affected. There is this broader sense of understanding that this world is so absent of, unbelievably absent of, is doing the incredibly hard work of trying to understand one another, what's going on, the horrors that are happening in this world. And I'm not skirting around subjects. There are just so many horrors that are going on in this world. And making music, perhaps on a selfish side, is helping me understand why. Why are people doing what they're doing? That's perhaps on a micro level, on a macro level. On a micro level, which in many ways is even more powerful, is just understanding the person I'm working with.
Yeah.
And another way of saying that is the person I'm having a conversation with. In musical terms, because that's all it is. It's chamber music is conversations. That's all it is. It's nothing more complicated than that. It's people trying to have even better conversations with each other. So for me, I'm also curious for you. My philosophy is just trying to listen better, always, literally, figuratively, and simply just trying to understand what's going on and understand about the music that I'm making, understand why it makes me to feel the way that I feel, why it makes other people feel the way they feel. And I think we're better off for it. What about for you?
Yeah, I would say for me, I would have to say very, very similar. I actually work primarily in the realm of dance, and today my art practice actually mostly consists of making music and not performing music, although I do get the chance every now and then to perform music. But I would say I'm very fortunate enough to work with a choreographer who desires my input in the whole process. It's not like, oh, you're hired to make music and that's all you need to do.
Yeah.
Nothing like that. But I'm also fortunate enough. Also, the reason why I'm working in dance is because I grew up in the world of dance. My mother's a choreographer. And so I do have like knowledge to the art, and just in general, the way that I like to work, whether if it's I'm doing sound design for a play, or if it is working with this choreographer, or music for music theater, or whatever it is that I'm doing, or even just me on a Sunday playing at church. For me, my philosophy is that ultimately I am just here to create. That's it. Sometimes I have an idea of what that is, or the group has an idea of what that is, but ultimately is that I'm here to create. And for me personally anyway, creation isn't rigid. And so that always means for me is that I'm always flexible.
Yeah.
I'm always willing to try something. Even if I come in and I know exactly what this is most of the time, I end up don't even liking that anyway.
Yeah.
When I've done.
Yeah.
So for me, ultimately, why I really say I'm fortunate to work with the choreographer in the way that I do is because I really do get to, from the moment, be in every aspect of the creation process. And I think that the things that in which I'm most directly involved in making, which is the music, it benefits from that. And so I always try to, in whatever it is that I'm doing, always approach it from not music first, but your thing first, and then what can be grown out of.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Fascinating. What is it that you look for when you're approaching a new score for the first time?
I think whenever I'm approaching a new score, I tend to ask really silly questions, actually. Um, like, why did this composer write this? What's the point? Why is this an allegro or a fast tempo? Why? uh, why is it just strings right now? Just really sort of mundane questions so that eventually I can have a better understanding of the whole in a way. I sort of treat every score the exactly same that way. I think there are a lot of people that have a set structure, as in, I'm going to go in and delineate the form. Okay, this is sonata form. This is the bar that it ends. That happens in my process. That does happen as well, but usually a little further down in the process. I try to be as childlike as possible at first in order to get ultimate curiosity out of something. If I'm to do a Mozart symphony, for example, why in this symphony does he start with 3 big unison C naturals? Why? Is it the entrance of a parade of horses? Is it something really angular and Mondrian like, or is it whatever? And eventually, when I fall on something that is most convincing to me, then my music making tends to become a little bit more nuanced in character. All of that to be said, this is oftentimes in the service of being able to give something on a technical level. Orchestras, we don't always have all the time in the world, so it's important to be efficient. When I'm approaching a score, I try to approach it in the most artistic way possible, without over analyzing at first, but rather trying to discover the piece as it goes on. Especially if I know a piece already but have never conducted it, if I go in thinking, yeah, I already know how this goes, let me just go through and do the work so that I can go do the work, then I feel a little bit less responsible in a way, because it's an image from the past, whereas something from now. So I try to be childlike. I try to be silly about it. I try to be as curious as possible to begin. Ask really big, sometimes obvious questions, because sometimes you get really interesting answers for that as well too. That's really important to me, to treat it on a case by case basis. Yeah, really important for me. Yeah. What about you?
I would
It's a big
say
question.
it is a big question.
Big question.
It is. I would say that I am a little bit more. What would you would say? Straight, just
Processed.
yeah, just straightforward with it. And then I would say, it's reverse. I don't think I necessarily ask as childish questions, but I think for me, I'm always most comfortable starting with the structure.
Yeah, for sure.
To a certain degree, it is always good to know the piece.
Yeah, of course.
I would say that I'm very much aware that I can almost take advantage of that by the fact that I can easily do that and sometimes neglects things.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's why I always start with the process first, for sure, that I know for my own self personally that I'm really, really comfortable and that everything feels good and comfortable and that I've taken the time with it. And then from that point, that's when I dive in and really do the exploration. And really be childlike. I would say specifically with pieces that I'm already familiar with.
Yeah. Wow. I think that's the most common way, which is a very successful way as well too. And sometimes I find, at least with me, I can get stuck in a piece towards the very beginning because I'm not understanding an intention or something. And then sometimes I have to move over and say, well, where are we in the structure? And then that might unlock the answer for it, actually. I just find for myself, sometimes I like the chaotic energy of, I don't know what's going on here, you know? Yeah, it tends to work for me most of the time.
Yeah. Cool. Well, then I do want to kind of throw something at you. I know this actually might actually be a very easy question, but for me as an alum, I can say that CalArts have most certainly influenced not just the way that I perform, but very much so the way that I think about music and approach music. And from talking with you, I can assume this is something that you can relate to. So what I'm curious about is, if so, how has that manifested in the work you do currently?
Yeah. Radical acceptance, radical tolerance, not being surprised by things, to be honest. The work that I've been exposed to at CalArts has opened up my brain in every way that you can possibly imagine. I have experienced some of the most informed 17th century dance music at this school, and also some stuff that maybe you wouldn't invite your grandparents to, but all of this stuff always came from a really interesting point of view, and it was always done with excellence as well. So for me, truly nothing is surprising to me anymore. It would take a lot to surprise me and especially to shock me as well, but it hasn't taken away the curiosity aspect of it. It's not like I've left this place jaded and saying, oh yeah, I've seen it all. It's not that. It's I've seen a lot and I can't wait to see more, honestly. Yeah, life is a lot less mundane after coming to this institution, that's for sure. Yeah.
And so then earlier, I know we had a brief conversation about programming. So when you do have a little bit more authority over your own programming, does this kind of get integrated into that in any way?
In a way, I mean, every program I make is always a collaboration, always. There's always someone at an orchestra or a couple of people at an orchestra that I'm having a conversation with about needs, wants, what are you interested, what am I interested in? These things are always conversations, but whenever I'm making a program, first and foremost, it's really important. I'm very fortunate about this, but it's very important that I'm into the music. I know that's not every case with everyone, but I know for myself, I'm always into the music that I'm doing. And also, I am always trying to pair things that you wouldn't necessarily think would go together. And sometimes I don't do that. So it's really sort of instinctual in a way. I don't oftentimes do themes, for example, like this is the water theme concert or the love theme concert. I think they work. I think they're beautiful. Oftentimes it's quite simple. It's like, do these sound good together? Yeah, these sound good together. Or do these not sound good together? But that's the cool thing about it. Great, then let's do that as well too. So yeah, sometimes my programs can be a bit unorthodox, not all the time, but sometimes they are, and perhaps that's when the CalArts comes in a way.
Yeah.
but it's a case-by-case basis always. And especially if I'm coming to an orchestra, orchestras, at least orchestras that I work with, tend to know that I also enjoy doing the unusual stuff, which is very important to me and has always been important to me.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I would like to maybe wrap up our conversation, kind of going all the way back, or should I say maybe possibly into your mid-career,
Yeah.
talking about your inspiration for conducting, or at least what was it that initially drew you to conducting in the first place?
Well, the initial draw to conducting, I was an assistant drum major in my high school marching band. Though that didn't cement me as a conductor. When I graduated high school, I was in no way interested in conducting. And then back in 2010, my father passed away, and his favorite piece of music was Mozart's Requiem. And so I thought I need to do something for his memory. So I decided to put on a memorial concert here in Santa Clarita, up the street, as a matter of fact, at a lovely church, and put together an orchestra, all CalArtians, put together a choir, all CalArtians. We rehearsed downstairs in this building. And over the course of a month and a half, we rehearsed, then did the performance. And obviously it was a very somber occasion, but it did light something in me. And there was a sort of new authenticity that I hadn't felt in quite some time. I felt, well, this is maybe a direction I can go in. Thankfully, I had teachers that were very supportive and encouraging about conducting and saying, maybe you should consider doing this. Eventually ended up studying and whatnot, but actually the unfortunate thing is it took a death for me to find my eventual career. But, I was always a musician, and this is just another way of expressing it.
Well, then I think I lied. One more question for you then. Please. Yes, one more question. Speaking of support, in what ways did the CalArts community impact you just as Ryan?
I think I go back to what I said earlier during your question is radical acceptance. I felt like I could do anything here.
Yeah.
Never felt anxious here. Not to a significant amount. I always felt that I had support from the staff, definitely from the student body. That doesn't mean there weren't occasional things that happen. That's life. Stuff happens in life, obviously. But most importantly, I was never limited here as an individual, regardless of music. And actually, it's a very good question. I really felt that I was Ryan here. In my day-to-day life, everywhere, it's more often that people ask me, how was rehearsal, rather than how are you? It's probably the most common question I get is, how was rehearsal? Or, yeah, how was working with this orchestra? How was doing this? And those questions, they're important. It's a big part of my life. I don't think I was ever asked that at CalArts. And I don't think I've ever been asked that by friends that I still have from CalArts. It's always, how are you? What's going on? What are you into nowadays? Oh, you have a gig? Sorry, I'm busy that day. But maybe we can meet up another time. It's always, it's more personal in a way. And, I've had to gently guide some people who are non-CalArtians into gently reminding less I'm more than my occupation. I'm gracious, very grateful for my occupation, and will always be. But, there are other interesting things about me as well.
Yeah.
And at CalArts, that's where it was fostered.
Yeah. Well, Thank you so much for sharing all of those interesting things with us today. It really has been a pleasure. And not just thank you for this interview, but really thank you. I know you have quite the schedule coming up the next couple of days. So really thank you for just really taking the time, not just to spend time with us, but really with faculty, with staff, with our students here. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you for me as well. Really appreciate it. This is super appreciated. Thank you.